You know, you can't really beat just, getting done working out, walking from, the in-house gym, and then just ending up, just sitting down and saying, all right, it's time to record a podcast. Because the BDSM studio, of course, that's Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, is right here, ready to rock and roll at all times. And I don't need to plug anything in or whatever. It's just always running, ready. Hell, if I wanted, the camera's looking at me right now, or the wide angle camera, that is, and I can just sit down and bammo, and I can start recording and talking to you. How about that? What a privilege. And I mean that. What a privilege it is to be able to do that. And of course, you, the patrons, who I am forever thankful for. Really afford me the ability to do that. And, of course, the sponsors as well, which it's really great to continually get new sponsors. Which, speaking of sponsors, holy shit, how about Zencash, huh? What a ride. I am so proud to be on board with them, and I know they're proud to be on board with me because, like me, they believe in being the future right now. Don't wait. Just build it right now. And, you don't have time, okay, to wait for the future to come. You need to start building it. And, of course, that's what we're all about on Sovereign Tech. So got some really exciting shit coming up in the next couple weeks. I mean, really going to have some great guests on the show. Not this coming week, but the following week they should be on. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. Just a lot of cool stuff. 2018 is going to be fucking insane. I mean, and it's really going to be insane. So very excited for all of that. Speaking of excited, boy, if you've been following me on social media, of course, mainly that area would be like Twitter. You might have seen me with my new portal gun. Woo-hoo! Ready for some adventures with that. I showed it to some people, and they got quite excited about the whole matter. So, of course, the portal gun is from Rick and Morty. If you haven't watched Rick and Morty yet, what the hell's wrong with you? Fucking get to it. The show's amazing. But I'm sure most of you have already watched Rick and Morty and are crazy Rick and Morty fans along with me. So already got some great response from the Sovereign Rewinds, which I've only released one so far. But that is where I've released like a classic Sovereign Tech special, not a Sovereign Tech episode, but a Sovereign Tech special from before the days of Patreon. And people are really digging those. And like I said, some of them I will update. Some of them need updating. There's others that don't. But I'm going to put in like custom intros for each one that go a few minutes. I mean, it's not going to be like, oh, here's this blah, blah, blah from 2013. Yay. I'll either maybe, if it doesn't need like a whole episode update, I'll give a little bit of an update in that episode, however it ends up working out. But I am going to make it worth your time because I kind of make it a point that Patreon should really be new content and like content you're not really getting anywhere else. Like you're putting money down. I want to make sure that's what you're getting. Now, I could release every Sovereign Tech special, over the next 3-4 months, and you'd still get all the content that you usually get on Patreon. So it's not like you're missing out on any kind of, content. In fact, I got the 2017 year in review from Patreon. They sent out this email to creators and I think even to patrons. And wow. So I was really, really honored by some of the numbers that I got. But one of the numbers, and of course, a lot of it has to do with you, the patrons. But one of the numbers that I got was that I put out more content than 95% of the creators on Patreon. So you're getting your money's worth, right? I mean, I am just loading this shit up. So anyway, but you're here for the Q&A. You're here for the content. So why don't we get into the content? And let's open it up with a couple tech questions. And we got an interesting question about, about the keto diet. And then maybe we can get into a fun question. We'll see how we're doing on time. But let's open this up. So do you know anything about the company Sitelock? My boyfriend has a few WordPress sites hosted at HostGator, and they recently added free Sitelock scans. A few days after he got an email about this, he got an email from Sitelock saying some of his domains were hacked. Someone got in and edited a couple deep pages to say that he'd hacked the site. It was an easy fix, but my boyfriend started looking into Sitelock, wondering if it was a service he should use. What he found was a lot of really bad reviews. People saying Sitelock basically hijacked their site, saying it was hacked, and that they'd have to pay $200 $5 to get it fixed. Now, a couple of weeks later, we get an email from Google saying another domain was hacked. He's had sites hosted at HostGator for at least 5 years, and all of a sudden they're getting hacked. It seems incredibly suspicious. Okay, so I have not used Sitelock at all. As far as WordPress sites specifically, I generally just recommend either, you can use WordFence, which is a very popular one. And actually, WordFence, even they have like a free version that doesn't do necessarily a whole lot. But WordFence will send out an email, like a newsletter almost, and they're frequent, but they are not. There's not a consistency to when they get released necessarily, and they always have a lot of interesting information and all the ways. Like it's for WordPress sites, about WordPress sites and them getting cracked into, hacked, whatever. WordPress sites, the plugins, everything else. There's problems by the second that go on. In my opinion, I'll talk about Sitelock in a minute. Okay, well, no, let's talk about Sitelock first. So yeah, I don't use Sitelock. I don't necessarily recommend it. There are some security services out there. Now understand that I have been for years not recommending using things like, and granted this isn't a website, but for an operating system, don't use an antivirus. Don't use a lot of the security software because while you can't exactly prove it, it is awfully odd how your computer, or in this case your website or something, could be running perfectly fine. And then suddenly once you put the security in, oh, there's this problem. Hey, we need to charge you this much to do it, blah, blah, blah. And again, this is very tough to prove. But in my opinion, I think a lot of times these security companies, and I put that in quotes, that they are actually doing the injection themselves. Like they're creating the exploit themselves or something like that. In fact, I've argued for a very long time, I've bought into the conspiracy theory that that's how Norton started. The Norton antivirus was that they were creating the actual, they created the first, various versions of malware, viruses, etc. And then they sold the software to fix it. And that turned into a huge business. I said that years before, there was one of the seasons of *Halt and Catch Fire*, was it season 2 or something at the end of it, that's like pretty much what the character of Joe did. Like that's exactly what he did. So that's a long-held conspiracy theory, not something you can exactly prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, I wonder sometimes. So something like Sitelock, it gets. There's two sides. Like I've looked into it a little bit. It gets good reviews on one end, and then on another end it doesn't. People say, "Oh, customer service is great," but then there's other people who say the customer service, really sucks. So here's my shtick with all of this. Regardless of whether Sitelock does a good job or not, they're, in my opinion, completely unnecessary. The best people, and I'm glad this is becoming more of a thing across platforms, not just websites, but also, with operating systems and other software and everything, where the developers themselves, the company that makes the OS, or the company that, or like WordPress themselves, as in WordPress, the company, not just the open source, website, software, or platform, I should say. Like they are getting into the business where they handle security themselves. And like Jetpack, which is made by the same company that makes, WordPress, they are, they've gotten very much into the security game and into the kind of backup of your website game and everything. And if you really wanted to lay down money, that's what I would do. Just like if you're using the Windows operating system, okay, if you're using Windows 10 or pretty much 7 and up, use Windows Defender. You use their security suite. You use Microsoft's very own security suite. Do not use anything else. Do not use Norton. Don't use any of that. To take that to another level, really what you want to be super, super careful. And I don't know what these, maybe, because I know the person that sent in this question she is incredibly intelligent. And I'm sure her boyfriend is as well. So if I'm stating the obvious, just know it's for everybody's benefit, even if you already know this. With WordPress sites, you really want them to be and I know it's tough because you want them to look pretty and everything else and very professional. And there's a certain look that, gets updated or becomes, the latest, what becomes chic every year. is it a landing page that just infinitely scrolls? Like what's the great look for this here? And I know that you have to keep adding on stuff to make that kind of work. And I know when you buy certain themes like the X theme or some others that they pack on, like there's built in a ton of different, there's already a bunch of plugins, which plugins are part of what make WordPress so great, right? Because you can make it do anything. Even though originally the WordPress, software development platform was just meant for blogging sites. Now, it can do it all. Again, it powers 20% of the internet or something or that amount of websites. It's insane. I mean, it's impressive. It's beautiful that something, so open source, does that. But anyway, my point, you really want to use as absolutely few plugins as possible. And I mean, I get it. If you're running a business, you got to make the site look good. And I know that that's the real trade-off and challenge. I have no problem with sites looking like they're from the 90s. I get it. I'm rather rare, or at least that's what people tell me. But I really like that's totally my preference, is that sites look like, I don't mind if they look antiquated. I don't mind if they look very basic, and if they, have classic drop downs at the top or something like that, and they barely have any JavaScript, etc. I think that's really great. And I say that because then, you can feel a little more confidence that site's not pulling any bullshit on you a little more. And, it'll work better across browsers and everything. Like we're sadly re-entering the age of where sites were optimized either for Firefox or for Internet Explorer. Back in the early aughts, right? Remember when all that started? Which is just crazy. That's so sad. I mean, it happens, but I think it's terrible that it's happening again. And you're getting so many sites that are optimized for Chrome, even though Firefox is legitimately, and I think on so many metrics, it is absolutely the superior browser out there. It's fast. It's, it has most of the extensions you could really want. It can do Hangouts now, as to where before for a little while Chrome was the only one that could do, or Chrome and Opera could do Hangouts. But now Firefox can do Hangouts as well. It's just, bar none, the better browser. Like it's crazy how much better it is. Again, on every metric, privacy included, even on philosophical metrics, it's the better browser. But anyway, so yeah, you really want to run as, keep it as simple as possible, run as few plugins as possible. Try not to have too much, JavaScript or even, embed codes into a site. And I know that's tough. And again, especially if it's for a business, sure, it's fucking hard. But yeah, that's the thing. Don't stop using WordPress. WordPress is awesome. The learning curve for things like Drupal and others, I totally understand why 20% of the websites are WordPress sites effectively. It just makes all the sense in the world. My website, zog.email, is absolutely a WordPress site. But, one thing, so I had a moment where I was trying to, I was going to build like a really super duper feature rich website. Okay. I was going to go nuts with it. And I had picked out a theme, the whole thing, I had everything mapped out how I wanted it to look. I'm not going to tell you the URL of it. And it got to the point where I just looked at it because, and I just said, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I can't guarantee the security of this. Like, this is a clusterfuck. As to where, like my previous site, and you have to understand. So when I was, ZomiaOfflineGames.com, which, by the way, that site is pretty much defunct. I just haven't totally taken it down yet. That website, okay, that website had a lot going for it, and I was putting out daily content. It was the real thing. I got attacked. So, there were so many attempted attacks on that website. It was mind-boggling, the numbers. Just crazy, And one of the easiest ways to protect a website is don't allow for comments. Turn comments off completely on a WordPress website, and you can solve 99% of your security problems. Kill those fucking comments. Don't even allow somebody, really to even have that avenue. I always say that my websites are speech-free zones. That's the way it is. I mean, granted, you can, like on zog.email, you can access Sovnet, which is my IRC channel. You can get to that there, and you can talk all you want. But then that doesn't necessarily show up on the main site, right? I mean, it's not logged and put on the site. So yeah, you really want to keep your websites as simple as possible. That's the best thing to do. Paying for WordFence or Sitelock or anything like that, no, like not. I don't think that those are really. I don't think those are worthwhile pursuits. HostGator, I don't necessarily have a problem with HostGator, but if you are looking for a new ISP, if you're wondering what ISP to go with, I recommend Namecheap night and day. I mean, just all the fucking way. Don't even think about GoDaddy. Don't think about it. Really, Namecheap is the one. They keep up with all of the latest standards, all of the latest, TLDs. I mean, they are on top of it. And I've had to use their customer service a few times, okay, to get some shit locked down and to do other things. Understand? I mean, like my sites have never been hacked. So, and I'm very proud of that. Okay. No matter how many attempts there have been on it, but part of that is because, I keep a connection, a conversation going, with the people at Namecheap. And while they may not be, English, first speakers, shall we say, they've always taken care of me. They've always solved any kind of issue that I'm having or anything going on. They're phenomenal. I cannot recommend Namecheap enough. I really can't. The other one to recommend, of course, is Agorist Hosting, as an Agorist, Agorist. If you want to pronounce it that way, agoristhosting.com. But they're expensive. But you get incredible customer service and redundancy with them, and they're liberty-minded. They've actually, full disclosure, they've been a previous Sovereign Tech sponsor. So that's something to consider as well. And they do I think they do the WordPress transferring and everything. I mean, they're fantastic. But it's really between those two, Agorist Hosting or Namecheap. And I mean, I love Namecheap so much. Agorist Hosting has honestly offered, to take care of my sites and to be the backbone for any of the projects that I want to run. And I'm really honored that, because they really appreciate, they respect the fuck out of what I do on this show. I mean, they really care. And, I'm honored by that, and they're great people there. I know them personally, I've hung out with them. I mean, they're great. But for varying reasons, and just because, I've set some things that aren't necessary, that most Sovereign Tech listeners wouldn't, it's not facing in your direction. I've stuck with Namecheap, and like I said, I've never had a problem. So Namecheap is a totally valid, and cheap is in their name, and it's there. I mean, their prices are fantastic. For a while, they were one of the first ones to accept Bitcoin. I don't know if paying for, your ISP bill, or not your ISP, but, paying for your, web hosting bill with Bitcoin is a great idea right this second, but at least they're on top of that shit, right? So, kudos to them. So yeah, there you go. I don't recommend any of those. Sitelock, whatever, I don't have a ton of personal experience with Sitelock. I agree. What I've looked into looks very sketchy. Okay. Like super sketchy, but again, I just don't recommend these sorts of things. The best security you can do is, digital minimalism. Okay, which means software and account minimalism. Keep everything locked down, keep it tight. Try not to use a whole ton of plugins and everything as much as you can. I get it. When you're running a business, you might not have a choice. Okay, but yeah, that's what I've got to say on that. And if you are looking for a new ISP, by all means, or looking for a new web host, or DNS, company, whatever. Again, Namecheap all the fucking way, all day long. They are just phenomenal. So, okay, let's move on to another. It's kind of a comment and a question. So I want to read it because I think it's an interesting point. Here it is, quote, I have been running back of the envelope, and it does seem like in the world of appreciating cryptos, unless you can get a payday very quickly, I mean like a few days, that the money invested into mining equipment is opportunity lost appreciating in value had one invested into the crypto in the first place. A lot has to break right for mining to make sense. I think small scale and as an alternative to using exchanges, mining is a good side project. Will work on tweaking my Zencash node. Right on. Yeah, Zencash nodes. Boy, you are anybody running Zencash node. I mean, you are absolutely, understand, and I'm not saying this because they're a sponsor. I'm dead serious. You are doing the Dark Lord's work. You are building the future. Like, you are absolutely building the infrastructure of the future, and I think that is so exciting. Okay, so kudos to anybody doing that. But But the point that this person's making, and there's more, I'll read more, but the point that the person is making is that, you like mining isn't really like fiscally a great idea. You're better off just buying the crypto from an exchange or something, and that being, kind of the end of it. You've got to be right. You have to either be doing it really early on for it to make sense, or you have to be planning on like being one of the major miners for, and thus spending the thousands and thousands, if not more, dollars to, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever, that you're going to become the backbone of some whatever cryptocurrency it happens to be. Okay. So yeah, I get that. You really, like, if you're mining, the reason you want to be mining isn't so much for the payoff. It's more of your belief in the infrastructure. That's really, where like mining, I think, makes sense for somebody, especially with other cryptocurrencies. Obviously with Bitcoin, nobody's really doing their own mining anymore. Like that's kind of flew the coop, despite any efforts, to try to make it more the contrary. But anyway, so yeah, I agree with that point. It really is, for mining, for you to make money off of mining, and doing mining seriously and right. Yeah, there really are a lot of factors. I mean, like a lot of serendipity, a lot of perfect, moments that have to come together for that, or perfect elements, I should say. So, all right, reading on. In my estimate, it definitely seems like a safer road to go is to make money doing whatever and invest that into crypto, dollar cost averaged. I want to stay with a flexible schedule and not tied down to an employer. I'm thinking to just Uber drive or similar and put money in as I can. So, side question. Before I get to the side question. Yeah, so just, working some kind of job and investing that as much as you can, some loose job. And I think that's really key today, to take advantage of the money-making opportunities that are happening online right now. And believe me, they fucking are. Okay? They really, really are. I mean, and they're varied, whether it's Patreon content, whether it's, investing in cryptos, whether it's writing books, whatever the fuck. I mean, the opportunities are positively remarkable. If you have the ambition, if you have the drive, and if you have just a smidgen of talent, at least be clever. There is a lot of money to be made online right now. I mean, there really, really is, if you have a loose schedule. So yeah, becoming an Uber driver, whatever, be parasitic on whatever these little, odd jobs can do for you, and make that money, and then put it right into crypto. I mean, and again, everything's early, right? Because only, the most incredible statistic to me out of 2017 is that at the end of 2017, barely even 1% of the population of the planet Earth, the entire fucking planet, barely 1% holds cryptocurrencies. 1%. And what's the market cap on all this shit? Yeah, it's early. I mean, hell, just yesterday morning, okay, take Zencash, for example. Just yesterday morning, it was at $50 a Zen, right? A coin, whatever you want to call it, a token. It was at $50. Today, it was like at 63. It might have even kissed like 65 or something like that. You would have done fairly well. I mean, especially percentage-wise, regardless of how much you bought into it. That's a very nice increase. Just inside of a couple days. So even if you think, 50 is too much, blah 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 blah. Look, I remember. I mean, what's Zcash? Not just Zencash, but what's Zcash at now? Zcash is at like 700 or over 6 anyway. In May, I remember it was 60. I mean, like there's opportunities. They're out there. They're happening right now. You are not too late. You're not even too late to get into Bitcoin. You're just not. Okay. I mean, yeah, there's some major opportunities that you missed as far as that goes, but they're not gone, and always keep this in mind in life in general, not just with, making money or whatever else. Look, not every opportunity is for you. It's just not. You have very special and unique talents, and yes, you do. Don't listen to those fuckers who, start calling everybody snowflakes and all that other bullshit. Okay. You have special and unique talents, and pay attention to them. Let them guide you, start paying attention to your instinct, listen to your insides. Okay. I never trust anybody that doesn't listen to their gut. Listen to your gut, and it can probably take you. It's going to show you an opportunity. There's going to be some kind of opportunity. It's such a remarkable time. It really is. So, there you go. I think that's a great idea. Find a job that's a flexible schedule, stow in whatever money you can into cryptocurrencies, of your choice. Of course, as I've said in the past, my top picks, of course, are Bitcoin itself. Litecoin, I still think is a great pick. And Zcash, of course, is. And Zencash. Those are kind of my big four right now. And I mean, there's other things, people could talk about Ripple and Ethereum and Dash and whatever. And I get it, and you can probably still make money off of those too. They're just they're not my top projects. Or there's Pivx, Pivx. That's an interesting one, even though some people say they've already made all the money off of that. Well, you never know. IOTA, there's ones out there, but I have my top four, and those are my top four, and I still think that there's plenty of money to be had with all of those. So, okay, let's read on a bit, but I love your plan so far. So, reading on. So, a side question. I have a mechanical engineering background but have always been good with computers. I've done some basic programming and have hacked around Ubuntu and Linux Mint for a few years. I know you had a question from someone about getting into programming, and you talked about the difficulty older people can have becoming good programmers. I think that's right, because it's a whole mindset shift using new languages, whether spoken or coded. But what about getting into computer security? I'm turning 40 soon. I've done well enough with my crypto investments to be financially independent, pending major corrections. I did pick up that computer security humble bundle you recommended. Good on you. I am thinking to slowly go through those one by one. Do you recommend any other online coursework? I know Hacker House has some courses, and I've seen other seminars on YouTube. I'm sure it's the kind of thing where if you get some learning under your belt, the best thing to do is get experience in any way you can. Likely for less experienced people, I think that means providing services for the average consumer. Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here, okay, for a few things. So a couple points. One, the best place to go and you want to get some learning is IT Pro TV. Okay, that's itpro.tv. That's the website. I'll try to remember to put the link in the show notes. But IT Pro TV is, you have to pay for it, but you can get your CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker. You can get your certification through them, especially if you're have a loose work schedule. You can take these courses, and it's not like a really rough schedule or anything, but. Yeah, IT Pro TV, they have courses for everything. And if you want to take courses on computer security, absolutely get on board with that. It is a well-known fact that there are not enough cybersecurity professionals in the world to handle what the fuck is going on. You just look at the IoT explosion and everything else. There are not enough people to handle this. So, yes, even the most, even if you're not you don't become the greatest coder in history or something. If you can get your CEH, you can get some stuff under your belt. There are companies out there to hire you for now, but keep that crypto plan going, because obviously the goal of a lot of what gets called machine learning or even AI projects is to eliminate the jobs of, cybersecurity from humans. That way the concept would be in Silicon Valley that they're creating trustless cybersecurity. And with humans involved, it can't be trustless. That's their idea. But for now, and for the next probably decade at least, oh yeah, I think you've got a great job that you could, get lined up for you. The other thing is that, yeah, you could do what I've done, which is, I created Sovereign Tech Solutions a couple of years ago. And I get clients who they just need... the hard part is pricing, but they just, it's the average consumer, and they want to lock their shit down, and they want to know how, and I help them. Okay. And even smaller companies, you can help them out, but get that CEH, make sure you're looking good. Okay. And then you can do that, and you can make some all right money, doing that sort of thing. You really can, again, the hard part is, what do you charge people? Because you get people, people have emailed me, and I appreciate it. They've emailed me, and, they're like, well, I want to, really get my phone locked down. I want to do this. And, but they want to pay me like $200, $300. And it's like, yeah, but I can't take an hour away from anything to do that for that amount of money, so not for the, like, because it's hard work, like, to get this stuff, unless you're just going to, like, well, here, let me help you install LastPass or something, unless you're doing something like that. Sure. I guess $300 is, or, then, price is a different issue, but pricing is the hard part. You got to kind of figure that out for yourself. You got to gauge your situation, where you live and your clientele, and nobody can really tell you, what the exact price should actually be. It took me a little while to really figure that out for myself as well. But yeah, you can totally do that. I mean, that absolutely. But those books, like all the cybersecurity books, Humble Bundle keeps putting out these sets. The sets are fantastic. What comes with them? I mean, like serious cryptography, proof of concept, or get the fuck out. I mean, like, there's a bunch of different ones, and those sets can really, I mean, that, you can learn a lot from that, and you can get an edge. You can earn your CH just by doing everything through IT Pro TV, right? But you can get like a really, really fine edge on a lot of your competition potentially when you read those books and you understand some of the concepts and the history, especially the history of cybersecurity and things like that. It's so important. So, yeah, I think you've got a great plan. But to answer your side question, what should you be looking into? Definitely look into IT Pro TV. Get your CEH. Make that happen. It's not, I mean, as long as you're obviously technically minded, and very well so, you'll get it fine. It's not that hard. As long as you haven't, if you know what RAM and CPUs and everything are, I mean, it's really it's not that bad. So anyway, okay, so yeah, so we got that one out of the way. And but great, all the patrons listen to that. I think that's an awesome plan, and I agree with his assessment that, yeah, getting into mining even very early on, like, it's a real roll of the dice, and it might be far more practical. I mean, you could, for example, not Zencash but Zcash. Like, Zcash was weird because, with the Genesis block, like, it's so few people, or there was so little of it out there. You're starting from zero. And like at the time, Zcash were worth, I mean, like, what was Zuko, like a trillionaire, like on day one, because, there was so little, there's so few Zcash actually out there. And so, mining in that sense, all right, yeah, that might have made sense, even though the price would correct and, get to something, but now it's going right back up. So, yeah, I mean, you're really, really, really rolling the dice with that. I mean, you could say you're rolling the dice if you just buy the cryptos outright. Maybe, but I think that there's cryptos that have shown that have a few elements to them that you can look at that make them a much safer bet than anything else, and certainly a safer bet than getting into mining. So great points all to bring up there. And yeah, tech jobs, don't count on them forever. That's why I want to get into investing. Okay, or in my opinion, you want to get into investing in cryptos. But for right now, for the next decade, tech jobs are a hot ticket. They really are. So, okay, let's move on to another question here. This is a fun one. So, just finished listening to the fitness episode, which Stallion Breaking In. The fitness episode is one I released it last week I think it was January 2nd that I released it on. It was the 2018 fitness episode, which I'm now planning to update at least every year, maybe even sooner than that, but at least once a year. I will update what I'm doing fitness-wise. People are really inspired, and they love to hear that. They love listening to it. So fine, I'll share it with you. If you're interested, I'll tell you. That's the whole reason I talked about it in the first place, was because there were people that cared and wanted to hear it. They asked me to talk about it, so I did. Anyway, so just finished fitness episode and had one question. Do you have an opinion on keto salts and esters? I use them sparingly, usually for a week if I'm getting back into keto after an extended time out of keto, or if I get knocked out by something like Christmas. All the information on them is biased. Okay, yeah, I have an opinion. Okay. I don't have a problem with them, especially keto esters, which are far like purer product, but of course they taste like ass generally. Like, I mean, you can just ingest that stuff raw, and I mean, and really you're drinking like raw ketones, and it's bad news. Like, it tastes so terrible. And it's not really necessarily a consumer product right now anyway. So esters, like the nice thing about them is that you're getting those ketones like right into your bloodstream, and a lot of them, and you're going to get a ton of energy out of that, right? Because I mean, that's the point of, eating a ketogenic diet and being in ketosis, is so that, your body is burning its fat most efficiently, and you are, you've got the best metabolism going, the most energy going, etc., because this is how humans were meant to function. This is how they're meant to operate. Doesn't mean that some people haven't evolved to where, they're fine out of ketosis, but, right. That's kind of the idea. Now, salts are kind of a gentler way, because downing esters straight can actually really, I don't think it does any physical damage to your stomach, but it can make you feel a little sick. You're not going to feel the best when you do that, depending upon the strength of it and whatever. Salts are kind of a gentler way of doing it, to get ketones. And I don't really have a problem with them, and I don't think they're bullshit. They are going to, get more ketones into your bloodstream, so they're working, right? They're doing the job. So, the only real ketone, I guess you could say, production enhancement that I take, or that I do, is, and I mentioned it in the fitness special, even though I didn't mention why, is that's the purpose of the MCT oil, because MCT oil really helps enhance ketone production in the body. So, that's the safest one, in my opinion, is MCT oil, and the cheapest. Actually, I think I haven't bought ketone salts in a while, or keto salts in a while, so I don't know. But that's the one that's kind of tried and true and out there, and you can sort of put it into anything. It's just, I put it in my shakes. It's really, really beneficial. But yeah, I guess to just, extrapolate on the opinion, salts are fine. I don't really use them. Esters are really serious, and you're either going to deal with tasting shit or having a sick stomach or something like that. So that's, and maybe they've improved that recently. I don't know. But as long as you're okay with that, I think they both work fine. But it's up to you whether or not you want to use them. Like I said, my route to enhance ketone production is MCT oil. So there's my opinion on that. Very limited opinion, but there it is. I got to admit, I'll tell you, it's so nice to, for your girlfriend to be, a biochemist. Stephanie, I ask her, I'll just ask her questions, it's yeah, so how about this, and she always gives me such a great take, and obviously an informed and legitimate take, because she knows what the fuck she's talking about. She's done it. She's been in that world, in that realm, which is, really, really, that's so helpful. Because any little thing going on, and she'll give me better answers than Google will all day long. It's always so cool to ask her. So a lot of times, I kind of, I definitely pay attention to my health, and I try to learn a lot about what I do, what I'm doing and everything. But I'll admit there's a lot of things that I sort of just offload the fact, and I'm just well, she knows. So, and she's always, and we're always together, so I can just ask her. I don't have to keep it stored in my head. She's kind of my own little medical Google, I guess, or medical DuckDuckGo, because if anybody cares about privacy, it is that woman. Anyway, so sometimes questions like that, I know what I do, but a lot of what I do will be based upon what Stephanie recommends, and I don't always retain why she said I should do that, and I'll just do it, because I trust her with everything. But anyway, so that's why I say, my limited response in the matter. There you go. All right, let's actually, wow, we're doing pretty good on time here, and these are some pretty good questions. Let's get on to our last question here. And the last question I've got here actually turns out that got quite a few people who were interestingly interested in, they like the idea of Stephanie and I doing reviews of wrestling pay-per-view events, which, we've been, Stephanie's been falling pretty hard into the whole wrestling realm. But anyway, the question, there was a lot to it, but the question was basically, who do I consider to be the greatest wrestler of all time? I think I've already either lived this up or answered it a million times, but I'll bring it up. But right now, I'll tell you, Stephanie, she's obsessed with Asuka, which is the Empress of Tomorrow. She's really digging what she's doing, and today, now, I got to tell you, in all the years, and I mean decades, that I've watched wrestling, like the women's division is the most exciting thing going on. I said this on the wrestling special we did when Stephanie and I went to go see Clash of Champions in Boston back in December. But yeah, I mean, like the women's division's awesome. You know, Charlotte, Naomi. I mean, you know, obviously Paige. You go down the list. It's just, I mean, it's amazing the talent they've got, and just how really great they are. You know what they're doing, and their storylines are kind of cool too. So the question was a little broader. It actually got into, you know, like best tag team, best whatever. So, oh boy. This is okay. So the first part of this is really easy. The other two, actually, the first couple parts are pretty easy. The other parts, maybe not so much. So like greatest wrestler of all time, it's painfully obvious. Ric Flair. You know, the only person that maybe I would, or that in my past that I've ever felt was any better for a time was like Shawn Michaels. And I still think Shawn Michaels is amazing. And even Ric Flair, like when you read Ric Flair's, his original autobiography, which was called To Be the Man, which came out, what was that, like in 06 or 07? Even in that, he says, like, Shawn Michaels is just a greater wrestler than I am, straight up. He's the only person that he says that about. Now, he'll say like that more people know who Hogan is, you know, that Hulk Hogan is and everything. But the only person he's ever really said is just a better wrestler than he ever was is Shawn Michaels. And, of course, Shawn Michaels had the distinction of retiring Ric Flair from the WWE. Or from wrestling in ring in the WWE. Of course, Flair would go on to do a little somewhat fun run in TNA after the fact. But so that's about the only person that, I mean, because I loved Shawn Michaels back in the day. You know, when before he became a Christian, that's when everything kind of fell apart. Not that he didn't have some great moments. I mean, when Michaels, you know, when he came back with that SummerSlam to take on Triple H, you know, and I mean, the whole time you're just holding your breath the whole match because, you know, everybody thought that because of Shawn Michaels' back problem, the fact that like they had to pretty much fuse his back, that he could never really wrestle again. And he comes back and he does like one of the greatest matches in wrestling history with, you know, another one of the greatest wrestlers, Triple H. Triple H would definitely be pretty high up there on my list too. Just Triple H doesn't have the same variety of arsenal that say Shawn Michaels had, and certainly both. I don't think it's unfair to say that both Triple H and Shawn Michaels had a greater, you know, wrestling arsenal than Ric Flair ever had. But Ric Flair had so much more going for him. You know, he had all the charisma, which, yes, Shawn Michaels and H both have tons of charisma, but Ric Flair's charisma is just through the fucking roof. You know, it's insane. But I mean, Ric Flair's the reason that he's the reason that I do all that stuff. I mean, you know, the Golden Stallion, that's what Ric Flair used to call himself. You know, I mean, like of course, I add on Golden Stallion to the tech world, but regardless, I mean, so much of what I do, you know, I've kind of mimicked or modeled after Ric Flair. So without a doubt, he is, you know, just one of the, you know, he is the greatest wrestler of all time. Goldberg, I was a huge fan of Goldberg, not the greatest wrestler of all time, but talk about charisma and presentation and style, cool factor, all those he has way up. Right up there with, you know, The Rock and Triple H and all those guys. I mean, he's still, you know, a wrestling phenomenon. Wrestling, you know, being a great wrestler doesn't necessarily mean that you have all the great technical ability and that you can do moonsaults off of the top rope or something like this, okay? You know, being the greatest wrestler, there's a lot of elements involved with that because you're a showman as much as you're an athlete, if not more of the former than the latter. So, yeah, I mean, and I... You know, one thing I absolutely love is that whenever, like, Ric Flair's doing an interview or he's interviewing somebody to this day, and thankfully he's still alive. There was a close call a few months ago. To this day, he, you know, like, people will just call him champ. You know, like, he'll be talking to him and they just call him champ. He's not wearing a belt around his waist, but they just call him champ because he's the champ. You know, he's the world champion, and he always will be. Yep, Steve Austin's great. Yeah, I mean, there's a list of names that we could go down of great wrestlers, but even Steve Austin will, you know, get on his knees, frankly, have a come to Jesus moment right in front of Ric Flair. So, yeah, I have to hand it to Ric Flair. You know, I mean, and everything that was done with the Four Horsemen, which let's get into some of the more complex questions, parts of this. which is, what is the greatest wrestling stable? In my opinion, so a wrestling stable is like, it's not a tag team, it's a group of wrestlers, like usually 3 or 4. I mean, sometimes a tag team can actually be 3 people, just one of the guys won't be in the match. But a stable is generally when you get 4 or more, usually not so much 3, but it could be 3. You know, and there's a litany of stables. There's, you know, the Four Horsemen, probably the most popular. There is, you know, there's the NWO, there was D-Generation X, there was a Nation of Domination. Hell, I mean, in WCW, in its later years, you had tons of world orders. You had the Latino world order. You had red and black versus white and black. I mean, you had a bunch of different stables. And stables are really cool because you get a bunch of, especially when you got really, really great guys, and it's, you know, a stable's awesome when everybody there is individually fantastic at what they do. Or if 2 of the guys, say if it's a 4-person stable, if 2 of the guys are really great wrestlers and then the other 2 happen to be a really great tag team, like that works as well. You know, that's a fine setup. Kind of like Evolution or something. Well, really in Evolution, everybody was a great wrestler. You even had Ric Flair in that. So yeah, I mean, the problem is that when you get stables, like, for example, the Nation of Domination, which is an interesting storyline for sure, during the Attitude Era in the 90s, when you get the Nation of Domination, you know, you have guys in there who aren't, I wouldn't call them bad wrestlers, but like, they're obviously, they're better, they're considered far better because they're in the stable. It's not like if they were out of it that they would somehow be this, you know, top-ranked talent. So that's when a stable, I think, isn't so great. Not that there's anything wrong with having a bunch of, like, you know, B-class superstar, or, you know, stars or B-class wrestlers or something in your stable, but that's when things don't look as good for you. You know, I mean, and there's other ones, like in TNA, you had the Main Event Mafia. You know, there used to, in WCW also in their later years, right, they had the Millionaires Club and was it the New Blood? Like, I thought that was an awesome storyline. So, but as far, like, this is actually kind of tough. Like, I just want to say Horseman, because Arn Anderson, and really whoever the 4th guy was, whether it was Ole Anderson or if it was, you know, Lex Luger, or, you know, if it was Barry Windham, you know, which was probably the best replacement for Ole Anderson, you know, whatever it ended up taking shape as, like, the Four Horsemen was just, it was so cool. And what made the Four Horsemen so amazing? So the Four Horsemen, the original Four Horsemen, was Ric Flair, Tully Blanchard, and then the Andersons, which were a tag team, and that being Ole Anderson and Arn Anderson. The amazing thing about the Four Horsemen, and I think DX maybe kind of lived up to this as well, was that what they were really, like, what they were putting out there, you know, being like this really badass, like, elite, you know, like, we hold all the championship belts, we live this wild lifestyle, you know, we're wealthy, we're riding around in limousines and private jets, and we're getting girls, we're renting out, you know, the top of hotels and all this shit, right? You know, they actually did that. Like, that was their real life, you know? I mean, the belts, sure, that's a decision, you know, made by the booking office, but otherwise, you know, everything that they were talking about putting out there, other than, I mean, and the wrestling was fake, of course, but, you know, other than what they were talking, I mean, what they were talking about all the time, they were really doing. Like, it was totally legit, and that's what made it work so well, and that's what made it so believable, and I think that's what made it so cool. I mean, and you had guys, you got to understand, in the 80s, with, you know, when the Four Horsemen were at their peak, you had guys working summer jobs just to buy a fucking Rolex watch so they could be like the Four Horsemen. They would save up their paychecks all summer long just so they could buy a fucking Rolex watch. They couldn't do anything else, but they could buy a Rolex watch and they could be like, well, shit, you know, all right, I'm like the Four Horsemen. I got this. I mean, that's how influential they are. You had people, you know, like, especially in the 80s, you know, wrestling wasn't exactly, I mean, you know, WWE or WWF at the time, you know, would start to bring some shall we say, some class. And I don't really mean that to be disrespectful or degrading. Would bring some class, you know, to the wrestling world. But, you know, usually down south, where the Four Horsemen were their biggest, you know, the average person sitting in the stands is, you know, probably have a little bit of a belly going, and nothing wrong with that, but just saying, you know what I'm talking about, you know, I mean, they have that look, you know, kind of an unkempt look, right? But then suddenly you had guys showing up, and they're looking fresh and clean. I mean, they're wearing 3-piece suits, sunglasses, the whole thing. And, they're holding up the sign that says, "We're here for the Horsemen." I mean, and they were a huge fucking deal. And it just kind of magically happened. Like, it wasn't even something, they didn't plan it in a booking office either. It just happened. The Four Horsemen, just tremendous. So you've got that. So, I mean, I want to just hand it off to the Four Horsemen, but I loved it's, and I go back and forth on this. I love DX. I love D-Generation X. I love it so much. They saved, I say this all the time, they saved me. You know how Jesus is supposed to save you, when you become a Christian? DX saved me and made me a hedonist when I was a teenager, and I am forever thankful for that. And I've even thanked Triple H personally for it. I mean, man, So I love DX, but I love the NWO. I thought the NWO was fucking great. Red and black and white and black. It's fine. I love the NWO. That was such a cool idea. The difference being, I think where the NWO might sometimes get the short shrift, not that they didn't change the face of wrestling and everything. They certainly did. But I think they might get the short shrift a bit because unlike DX and the Four Horsemen, like DX was really doing it. Like they were getting all the girls. They were doing all that stuff, outside of the ring and in. The NWO, yeah, Hogan would ride around, wearing all black and have the Hollywood stuff on and everything. Sure, he'd ride around Florida doing that, of course. But really, you knew when those guys were, outside of a wrestling ring, they weren't really like living up any kind of lifestyle like the NWO was. They weren't. So as to where DX, I think, kind of was. And the Four Horsemen absolutely were living up to everything that they were talking about. So it's kind of tough to give it to the NWO. As much as I love the NWO, I still think that's like just one of the coolest things to ever happen in entertainment. Now, I don't mean sports entertainment. I mean fucking entertainment, straight. Like, it's epic. I remember I was showing it to Stephanie. We were watching documentaries about it recently, to get her caught up on things. And she was watching, and she's just like, "Oh my God, that's awesome!" Like, she thought it was so cool, So, yeah, there you have that. But anyway, so I'm going to give it to the Horsemen just because I loved what they were putting out there. DX maybe second place, NWO third. And then after that, Evolution, then some of these other ones, but none of them like were really, had the impact or were delivering so much on, the Spirit Squad, like I'm going to call them, that, sorry, that's not a stable that excites me. Okay. but yeah, so I'll run with that. Okay, let's see. Best women's wrestler. Sure. Oh boy. Disable count? There's some modern talent, like I mentioned earlier. Asuka and Charlotte, Charlotte Flair. Obviously she's she's the Nature Boy's daughter. How can you not love her? They're both fantastic. Paige is fucking awesome. It's really tough to call this one. You almost want to go into like classical kind of women's wrestlers, like Scary Sherry or Sherry Martel, whatever, and some of that, but, or Fabulous Moolah, right? But, boy, like Alundra Blaze, I'll tell you, when she threw out when she came on WCW Nitro and she threw out the women's title, that was pretty badass. Not that she did a whole lot else in the WCW, unfortunately, but that was a pretty badass moment. I got to give that to her. Oh man, Beth Phoenix was awesome. It's such a, Trish Stratus and, Stacy Keibler. She would even wrestle. I don't know that I'd call her like a great wrestler. Tori, boy, you know who I'm going to hand it to. I'll tell you who I'm going to hand it to. This is the easiest. I'm going to give it to Stephanie McMahon, and yes, she wrestles, and she wrestles just fine. I'm going to give it to Stephanie McMahon, and she is, because if, like I said earlier, it's not just about your wrestling ability, it's about what you bring to the, what you bring to the ring entirely, talking and whatever else you do. She has been just a magnet for incredible wrestling, for storylines and great wrestling. Yeah, I give it to her all the way. She's phenomenal. She's absolutely like one of my favorite things in wrestling, like just bar none, and she has been ever since she more or less came on the scene. Back when, The Undertaker, when he had, what was it, the Ministry, right before it became the Corporate Ministry. That was a pretty cool, all right, that was a cool stable, the Ministry. That was pretty awesome. But when they had her up on the cross and everything, and Steve Austin, or on that, Undertaker cross, and Steve Austin had to rescue her, I mean, all that shit was awesome. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to Stephanie McMahon, absolutely, and she is well deserving of it, and she's just, I mean, she's hot, obviously, but she's got so much going for her, just a ton of talent. The apple did not fall from the tree, did not fall far from the tree, that's for sure. All right, there's like a ton of questions on this, so I'm going to skip I'll try to get to the last two. So, all right, yeah, okay, so greatest manager, or valet or whatever. If I'm not going to double up with Stephanie McMahon, I got to give it to Sunny. Sunny, just, what I'm talking about. I mean, she was it. She was really it. just brilliant. So, I mean, some of these might be obvious answers, right? But I didn't do tag team. Okay. So, cause that's an important one. Then one more after that. Greatest tag team of all time, man. The Rockers were really good. Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty. I mean, that was exciting wrestling, watching those guys do what they do. I mean, just phenomenal. I don't think DX could count as a tag team, even though it kind of was with Michaels and Triple H. It didn't exactly work out that way. You couldn't really count the Outsiders, like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, even though they'd be, they're definitely one of the greatest duos of all time. The mega powers, right? Hogan and Macho Man. I think I'm going to give it to them, and I'll tell you why. Okay, not because they're the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, even though Macho Man I don't think he's underrated as far as a wrestler goes, but he gets forgotten for just how great, because he was just so nuts, beautifully nuts. He gets forgotten for just how, like, really great of a wrestler he was, great a technical wrestler and all of that. But I mean, when you had Hogan and Macho and, Elizabeth was in their corner, holy shit. I mean, you just, in your own house, if you're watching it on your little 24-inch, glass tube television, the roof came off of your house when those guys would come out. I mean, that was just the craziest fucking idea, like, ever. It's like, all right, let's have Hogan and Macho Man be a tag team. Okay. So everybody's going to lose, right? I've got to give it to them. They were great. If I were going to count something not so cheesy and maybe with a few other metrics in their favor, I think Rated RKO, when it was Edge and Randy Orton, phenomenal tag team. They were the one, and I'll tell you why, because they were the one tag team that when they were beating DX, granted it was the second or third run of DX, when they were beating Shawn Michaels and Triple H, I absolutely believed that, yes, those two guys could beat them. They were that good. They were that phenomenal. They had that great of mic work. I mean, Edge is one of the best wrestlers of all time. Randy Orton's phenomenal. So if I wasn't going to give it to the Mega Powers, I'd give it probably to Rated RKO. I mean, that is a legendary fucking tag team that, delivered on everything, on every minute, every moment, and every match was gold. You want to watch great tag team wrestling, you just watch every fucking match of Rated RKO, and you will be, you're getting a masterclass in how it's done. Of course, Edge had a tremendous history, with Christian as a tag team, part of the legendary tag teams like the Hardy Boys and all that. So he knows how to do it. And then you just bring in a guy with that kind of visceral talent, like Randy Orton has. It's a recipe for greatness, and it was there. So, so I'll give that. So there's my tag team answers. I got the dream one, and then kind of, well, it's not dream, it happened, but the dream one, and then the more practical answer. How about that? So, okay, greatest match of all time. This one's actually the easiest. This is absolutely the easiest. I'm going to call two, but I'm going to tell you what is absolutely the greatest match of all time. No doubt about it, the greatest match of all time was a WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart. Just bar none. There is no greater match. That's it. They pulled it off. 60 minutes. It was exciting as hell. It was incredible. And Shawn Michaels, spoiler alert, Shawn Michaels takes the belt and bammo. That was awesome. I mean, that was like so insanely fucking awesome. You never wanted to miss a WrestleMania after that, after seeing something of that kind of, I mean, and when Shawn Michaels comes down from the fucking rafters, when he does his entrance and he comes swooping down, holy hell. How can you argue that? This is the greatest. That was so like, that was, he won up Ric Flair right there, as far as class. That was just amazing. That was so crazy. What was his name? Jose Lothario comes out, points up to the heavens, boom, and then down he comes. Holy shit. So I mean, everything about it, not just the wrestling, but the presentation, the storyline, building up to it, the whole thing was, that was just a masterful match, just incredible. That said, not that the match itself was that great, but all right, I'm going to give you two more. Not that the match itself was that great, but Bash at the Beach, when Hogan came out and became part of the NWO, and everybody thought he was coming to save WCW, and he was the third guy to join NWO. Obviously, that match, I mean, that's just, that's legendary. But it's not so much the match, right? Because what really happened outside of the match, more or less. So I can't really say that. I mean, it's definitely one of the greatest moments in wrestling history, but I don't think I can actually call that a match. But the second match that I actually wanted to call, and I know there's people that hate this and think it's a dumb idea. I don't think so. I thought the Finger Poke of Doom, okay? The Finger Poke of Doom is a match where they tried to reunite and bring back the NWO. Kevin Nash was the world champion in WCW, and he had a match with Hulk Hogan. Hollywood Hulk Hogan comes out. The match is about to start. Everybody's getting ready. Everybody's cheering. And Hulk Hogan just pokes Kevin Nash on the chest, and Kevin Nash falls over, lays flat. Hogan comes down, just leans down and pins him. 3 count. Hogan's the champion. And it was a setup. Like, it'd be Nash and Hogan set it up to and everybody's laughing and everything. And it was all about, just bringing the NWO back. I mean, like both guys knew what they were doing. So I love that. I know there's people who say that it's ridiculous and insulting to the industry and the title and all that shit. I totally disagree. I thought that was brilliant. I completely understood what they were doing. It made total sense, and I just thought that was fantastic. But I know not everybody's going to agree with me on that. So anyway, okay, that's it. There was like a slew of other questions in that, which maybe I'll get to. Maybe I'll save them for another like wrestling show, because Stephanie and I are going to review the Royal Rumble, which is coming up end of January, which is really exciting because, there's going to be the first women's Royal Rumble. Can't wait for that. In fact, I expect Trish Stratus to come out during that, amongst other people, which will be really cool. So, so there it is. Got some tech questions. Hope you got some good suggestions and things to go forward with out of that. Got some questions about health. How about that? Of course, feel free to send more of your questions. You can send them to me on Patreon if you want, or you can send me to, some people send them to me on Twitter. That's fine too. However you want, you can email them to me. However you want to get them to me, go ahead and get them to me. I'm trying to really pare down, like where, and I've done this a couple times throughout the history of Sovereign Tech. Again, we're in year 6. Where I want to pare down, where people contact me, but well, anyway, this is experimental. So I just, everything's an experiment, isn't it? So yeah, let me know. Of course, I did a post earlier today on Patreon asking for questions for the Relationship Rhombus show, which you can send those in, and we will cover those in a future coming episode of the Relationship Rhombus. And that'll do it. More content. You should have another Sovereign Rewind this week. Well, no, actually, all right. We'll see what comes out this week. I've got some stuff. I know I have stuff scheduled, and I'm trying to remember everything that it was. But anyway, I will see you on the other side. And again, Dynamite Sovereign Tech lined up this week, and then the following week we've got a beauty lined up that I can't wait to do. So see you on the other side.